Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 3 Legend of the Dragon King Part 34 based on novel. So let's start. A man-faced demon spider. This was the soul beast hunting man-faced demon spider. It was considered a powerful top-tier soul beast. Even at the 100-year level, it could contend with 1,000-year soul beasts on equal footing. Wang Jinsi threw himself away from it without the slightest hesitation. Even if he'd been in good condition, it was impossible for him to win against such a powerful opponent. With his weakened strength and spent soul power, his only choice was to flee for his life. Pu. Wang Jinsi's whole body tensed as he felt something coiling around his body. Despite his enormous strength, he was unable to break free. Even if he wanted to, it was now impossible for him to press the emergency exit button. A zixishuo sound emerged from the cold forest. In the next moment, Wang Jinsi felt a sharp pain before his body turned numb and cold from the inside out. Sun with rays. The Spirit Pagoda staff member urgently ordered, "Prepare for emergency treatment." Wang Jinsi's body was shivering when the metal box slid out. The affliction didn't stop even after the electrodes were pulled off him. A dozen staff members dressed in white rushed over to him in a flash. One of them took out a needle and stabbed it into Wang Jinsi's neck, delivering its contents into his bloodstream. Is it that man-faced demon spider again? Yes. That thing is so violent. It didn't even give this child a chance to press the button. This child's luck is truly terrible. Wu Zhongkong and Long Hongxiu calmly watched on as the white-clothed people busily moved to do their work. After no less than 10 minutes, the leader of the white-clothed group heaved a sigh of relief. Not bad. This child's willpower is very strong and he shouldn't have any problems now. Just let him rest for a while and he'll wake up. Finished with his explanation, the man left with the rest of the people in white. The scene returned to normal, as if nothing had even happened. Zhong Yangzi had been flabbergasted since the moment the people in white came in. What's going on? Teacher Wu, Director Long, is Jinsi okay? Isn't the Spirit Ascension platform a virtual place? How did he end up like this? Zhong Yangzi's words trailed off as he glanced at Wang Jinsi's pale face, his previous excitement now replaced by fear. The staff member said, "I have already told you, although the Spirit Ascension platform is virtual, it still contains a degree of reality. Everything you sense inside of there would be just as if you were feeling it in reality. So if you're harmed inside, then you will still feel all of the pain. For example, if you had been sliced into a corpse by the wind blades of those big green birds, then you would also feel the exact same sensations as a corpse. The sensations would be exceedingly real and would attack your mind. Simply said, if someone witnesses their wrist being slit, then they will also feel the gushing of their blood, the sound of it dripping down. Even when the wound closes and they stop bleeding, they will still sense the blood dripping, so their brain will think they are already dead. After this thought appears in their brain, they will truly begin to die. The Spirit Ascension platform has this problem, especially so for first-timers like you. Fortunately, the effects will gradually decrease as your spiritual power increases. By the time you can ignore the effects though, I don't think you'll be able to enter the elementary Spirit Ascension platform anymore and will have to enter the intermediate Ascension platform instead. The sensations in the intermediate Ascension platform are even more different. The intermediate Ascension platform. Zhong Yangzi's expression took a turn for the worse at these words. He was truly afraid now. This Spirit Ascension platform could actually result in a true death. Sun with rays. Gu was wandering about the forest in a daze. The lush forest, the clean air, it reminded her of something she had seen a lifetime ago. So beautiful. I really like this feeling. The fact that the Spirit Pagoda had created the Spirit Ascension platform could be considered nothing short of a miracle. She continued to head deeper into the depths of the forest. During her travels, she had encountered several soul beasts, but fortunately, they had been weak and easy to deal with. Each time she killed a soul beast, a faint light would radiate from her body. Her eyes grew wider and wider every time she felt this light. Amongst the 5 students, she and Tang Wulin had the least knowledge about the Spirit Ascension platform. As she was walking, a bush rustled, then a tall figure suddenly jumped out in front of Guu. It was a giant bear over 3 meters tall and covered in light brown fur. This bear had a pair of large claws and glistening yellow eyes. The beast released a thunderous roar when it saw Guu, then charged toward her. Sun with rays. A 1,000-year soul beast appeared. Do you want to warn her? A staff member looked toward Wu Zhongkong with a questioning gaze. Just watch for now. Wu Zhongkong's eyes were fixed on the screen. It was a rarely seen 1,000-year crystal bear. Even in ancient times it would be exceedingly rare. This 1,000-year crystal bear was a mutated from the same species as the Dreadclaw bear. Only, its mutation made it far weaker than the Dreadclaw bear. Although it was weaker than the Dreadclaw bear, the crystal bear did possess a special ability. Every single one of its attacks would cause its opponent's body to crystallize by a fraction, stacking until its opponent eventually shatters from its subsequent attack. Only with strong soul power and a quick removal of the crystallized areas would one be able to avoid massive losses from a crystal bear. The crystal bear also had a weakness: it lacked ranged combat abilities. Even without 2 soul rings, Guu was considered the strongest among the 5 classmates due to her incredible control over the elements. Furthermore, with her control over the spatial element, even Xie's attacks could be evaded. The greater the pressure, the greater the growth of a soul master. Wu Zhongkong firmly believed in this. He wanted to see just how his only female student would react in the face of a powerful 1,000-year crystal bear. Just as anticipation filled Wu Zhongkong, the crystal bear launched its attack. Sun with rays. Guu wasn't flustered at all. A single yellow soul ring rose from beneath her feet while her aura strengthened. First soul skill, Elemental Tide. Guu's body grew light as a green glow flashed out. Then, with a flash of silver light, she disappeared from her current position and teleported to another. The crystal bear's charge met nothing but air. Unable to stop itself, it ran headfirst into a large tree. With her back to the 1,000-year crystal bear, Guu ran away. Clearly, she had no intention of fighting the 1,000-year crystal bear. She waved her hands behind her, releasing a tornado. This tornado definitely wasn't meant to harm the crystal bear. After all, its defenses were too stout to be affected by some wind. However, this wind was sufficient to stir the leaves on the trees. A gale of leaves fluttered about, obscuring the crystal bear's line of sight. Guu seized this chance to teleport once more, changing her direction then bolting. Sun with rays. Beautiful. Her response was clever, fast as well, praised Long Hongshu. Wu Zhongkong gave a slight nod. He was pleased with Guu's steadiness in the face of such a terrifying opponent. She judged her opponent's strength at the very beginning and compared it to her own before quickly choosing how to react. In the end, she'd chosen to flee. Although fleeing was easy, the difficult part was in making such a choice in an instant. This just showed how calm and intelligent Guu was. He turned to look at another screen, one which had 3 dots on it. These 3 dots meant that there were only 3 people remaining in the Spirit Ascension platform. Guu was actually running in Tang Wulin's direction at that moment. Yi? Wu Zhongkong let out a light sound of surprise at this discovery. Sun with rays. 2 loud booms put Xie on alert. The origin these booms was fairly close and he could tell it was getting nearer to him. One had to be truly confident in themselves if they were willing to cause such a ruckus within this soul beast forest. Xie didn't dare to ignore it, so he climbed up a tree with lightning speed before hiding his presence, waiting calmly. This time, staying still was a better option than escaping for Xie. After all, he'd consumed quite a bit of soul power when he killed that long-tail mouse. A giant figure charged madly out of the thickets not too far from him. Xie was startled by its appearance because it was actually running toward him. The beast stood on 2 feet and reached a height of over 4 meters. Its entire body was covered in metallic scales while a single horn grew from its head. It was actually an extremely ferocious horned dragon. Xie's mouth felt a bit dry after seeing such a ferocious soul beast. He had seen all the soul beasts he had encountered today in books before. He had an excellent memory and could clearly remember this two-legged horned dragon. It was a dragon-type soul beast of the land dragon variety. It possessed tremendous physical strength and was considered among the top ranks of land dragons. Even in the complexity of this forest, it was able to maneuver around at lightning speed with its leaping ability and jerky motions. Although it lacked any ranged attack abilities, it possessed an unstoppable temperament. As long as it had a prey in its sights, it would go to the ends of the earth to kill it. Just what kind of luck was this to run into a 100-year horned dragon? In the past, agility system soul masters feared this type of soul beast the most. Not only was it quick, its attack, defensive power, and endurance were all amazing. Xie had only just recently obtained his second ring. Even at his peak, his efforts would have been meaningless when faced with such an overbearing opponent, much less to say his current condition. Why is this bastard heading straight for me? Bang! Just as Xie was feeling panicked, the horned dragon had reached him and charged headfirst into the tree Xie was hiding in without the slightest hesitation. A boom resonated throughout the forest as the tree, thicker than two people's arms wrapped around it, snapped. Xie hurriedly jumped to another large tree. A doubt arose within him. This guy's front arms seem weak. It shouldn't be able to climb up here, right? Hope was a beautiful thing, but reality was cruel. After breaking the first tree, the horned dragon immediately turned and charged at the tree Xie had found refuge in once again. This time, however, it didn't run into it head first, rather, it jumped. It jumped all the way up to Xie, its gaping maws closing toward him. A golden blade of light landed on the horned dragon's armor of scales, leaving behind a mere centimeter-deep white scar. Xie understood now that he was helpless against this beast, so he could only jump to another tree. The horned dragon was both large and agile. By pushing off of a tree trunk with its powerful legs, it was actually able to continue chasing Xie up in the trees. It was extremely fast and didn't lose a single inch to Xie. It truly was worthy of being called the nemesis of agility system soul masters. Xie did not dare to face it in a direct confrontation, as he knew that even with his light dragon storm, he would simply be throwing his life away. This horned dragon's scales was as sturdy as an armored dragon, but it was also exceptionally nimble. He was escaping at full speed, yet the horned dragon was actually slowly gaining on him. Meanwhile, Xie's soul power and stamina was being depleted. He could only run for so long. Is my only choice left to press the emergency exit button? Xie's heart was smoldering with his unwillingness. After all, this was his first time in the Spirit Ascension platform. How could he just let it end in such an unsatisfying way? Who? The 100-year horned dragon's ear-splitting roar caused Xie to slow down a step as a gale assaulted him from behind. Xie closed his eyes and moved to slap the button. He didn't want to relieve the sensation of having his bones broken again. Right at that moment, he felt something tug at his waist, pulling him to the side. The horned dragon crashed into another tree, its attack missing completely. Xie secretly rejoiced within his heart. He was familiar with this feeling of being pulled. He stopped himself from pressing the button. The horned dragon was truly stubborn in its pursuit. However, just as it turned to continue chasing Xie, a silver light flew past Xie and whizzed toward the dragon. Get lost! After that shout, the horned dragon's movement suddenly turned sluggish under the owner of the voice's aura. Due to its sluggishness, the silver light was able to directly smash into its head. Bang! The horned dragon, which stood over 3 meters tall, was smashed and sent reeling onto the ground. Only after rolling a few times on the ground was it able to stand up once more. Although it was only one strike, there had been 3 booms. It shook its head a few times before looking in the direction the silver light had come from. Tang Wulin pulled Xie back with his blue-silver grass and asked, "Are you okay?" Tang Wulin had actually been nearby, and the horned dragon's heavy footsteps had woken him. He had climbed up a tree to survey what was going on when he saw Xie faced with the horned dragon's onslaught. It seemed that Xie was actually quite lucky since Tang Wulin was nearby. During Tang Wulin's meditation, He had grown intimate with the surrounding plants and had been able to clearly detect Xie's activities from the rejection of the plants. Furthermore, he had been able to vaguely tell that the plants were rejecting a human, which was why he had been able to reach Xie so quickly. "I'm fine," Xie said as he gasped for breath. He had faced a life and death situation just moments ago and now his back was already drenched with sweat. "Be careful. The horned dragon is very stubborn and won't stop at anything once it has identified its prey." Tang Wulin laughed. "It seems you forgot that dragon-type soul beasts are the least terrifying to me. I'll just go compare my strength with it." Golden scales covered his right arm as he spoke while a dragon's mighty aura began to emanate from him. Normally, with its tyrannical nature, the horned dragon would have already charged at them, but Tang Wulin's aura caused it to hesitate. Its claws were dug into the ground, as if it were waiting for something. The heavy silver hammer he had thrown earlier was retrieved with a pull of the blue-silver grass connected to it. Now, with a hammer in each of Tang Wulin's hands, what did he have to fear from the horned dragon? "I'll harass it from the side so I'll have to rely on you to face it head-on." Xie turned into a blur and reappeared in the shadows of a nearby tree. This was to be expected since agility system soul masters excelled in backstabbing rather than frontal confrontations. Despite Tang Wulin's dragon aura, the horned dragon's instincts were beginning to take over. After only a slight hesitation, it released a dreadful roar before charging at Tang Wulin. The target of its wrath had already shifted to Tang Wulin after that hammer strike. A brilliant light twinkled within Tang Wulin's eyes as a strand of blue-silver grass shot toward a tree branch and firmly coiled around it. With a pull of his hand, Tang Wulin soared into the air. He somersaulted mid-air over the horned dragon and landed atop its head. With his feet firmly planted, he released a vicious strike with his left arm onto the horned dragon. After experiencing its might once, the horned dragon knew just how terrifying this hammer was. It turned its head while raising it, shooting its horn toward Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin didn't dare ignore such an attack, and so he released his golden dragon claw and evaded the horn while grabbing the dragon's head. For a moment, the horned dragon clearly became more sluggish after Tang Wulin released his golden dragon claw. Although it was only a moment, its reaction speed had still slowed down. Even though Tang Wulin's soul power and physical strength were great, it was no match for the horned dragon. However, this was balanced by the Golden Dragon King's influence over the horned dragon. The horned dragon's scale armor was strong and its skull sturdy, but in a split second, it was pierced by Tang Wulin's golden dragon claw like it was rice paper. The 100-year horned dragon's body lost all its strength. It was unable to even cry out as it collapsed on the spot. A yellow halo emerged from its body and fused into the little snake, Gold Light, who let out a cry of pleasure as a golden layer of light covered its body after the light merged with it. Tang Wulin stared at his right hand as it returned to normal. His heart was filled with an unfathomable feeling at the moment. When his golden dragon claw had made contact with the horned dragon's skull, it had felt like tofu to him, unable to put up the slightest resistance to his tyrannical strength. It seemed that dragon-type soul beasts and martial souls made excellent opponents for him. Indeed, his bloodline suppression effect was too formidable. He wouldn't have had such an easy victory without it. He made a fist with his left hand and punched the horned dragon's head. A dull thud was heard. The head moved back a bit, but the rebounding force made his fist ache. Indeed, the golden dragon claw's crushing effect was extraordinary. He needed to test its effects and limitations further so he could utilize it to its fullest. In any case, using it for such a short period of time had actually consumed 30% of his soul power. This was definitely one of the downsides of using the Golden Dragon Claw. Its consumption rate was simply monstrous. However, without his bloodline power, he likely wouldn't have been able to unleash an attack of this level. So ferocious, Xie said as he walked over, his face expressing shock. The horned dragon had been chasing him to the gates of heaven, yet it had been crushed in an instant by Tang Wulin. If this was a real soul beast, then you would have been able to absorb its 100-year soul ring directly, but too bad it's not, Xie said as he gave Tang Wulin a thumbs up. Tang Wulin said, it wouldn't have been this easy if it wasn't a dragon-type soul beast. Suddenly, a delicate voice called out from the side. "It's not exactly a dragon. Now hurry up and help me." A silver light flashed and a delicate figure appeared not too far from Tang Wulin and Xie Xie. With a green light beneath her feet, Gu reached them with lightning speed. A howl came from behind her, announcing the giant figure as it rushed out of the thicket. "Damn, that crystal bear is huge." Xie Xie went wide-eyed at the sight of the bear, while Tang Wulin stood stunned. The 1,000-year crystal bear was practically no different from a bulldozer as it barreled through the thicket. Any small trees unfortunate enough to stand in its way were simply crystallized, then smashed into fine powder. It was simply overbearing. The silver light flashed again, and Gu appeared right in front of the two. Her face was pale from exhaustion as she mustered her strength one more time and teleported to hide behind Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin swallowed a gulp. His instincts told him that this bear was far stronger than the 100-year horned dragon he had just killed. Squatting down, Tang Wulin grabbed the stiff horned dragon and hefted it up with both arms. The scales on his right arm began to shine brilliantly when Tang Wulin released a roar and threw the gigantic horned dragon corpse at the 1,000-year crystal bear. Heavens, his strength is insane! Long Hongshu's eyes had widened in shock at the scene of Tang Wulin lifting up the horned dragon's corpse. At that moment, Wang Jinsi awakened from his slumber, his complexion still deathly pale. He couldn't help but shudder when he recalled the feeling of the spider's leg entering his body, and the subsequent chill that had spread throughout him. The residual sensations Wang Jinsi was experiencing were far more severe than what Zhong Yangzi went through. When Zhong Yangzi watched Tang Wulin kill the horned dragon in a single attack, his eyes had already turned dull, for he knew that even with his powerful martial soul and soul skill, he would never have been able to take out the horned dragon in one hit. In fact, he doubted he would even be able to penetrate its defenses. Not to mention that now an even more powerful beast had appeared. A single attack from Tang Wulin's claw had killed the 100-year horned dragon, so Zhong Yangzi could only imagine the horrifying scene of himself receiving the claw's attack. Too terrifying. It was simply too terrifying for him to imagine. During the tests, Tang Wulin's power had merely been displayed as numbers, but now, Zhong Yangzi could clearly see just how powerful Tang Wulin was. He had thrown that giant horned dragon's corpse so casually. It seemed several thousand kilograms worth of strength really was nothing to scoff at. Will those three really be able to kill a 1,000-year soul beast? Zhong Yangzi thought nervously to himself. As he watched the three of them face off against such a powerful soul beast, his grudge against the trio cooled off and he began to cheer for them. Who? The 1,000-year crystal bear roared as it grabbed the incoming horned dragon's corpse by the legs. Dark golden crystals formed on the dragon's legs, creeping up the upper body of the corpse. In but a moment, it covered over half of the dragon's corpse. The bear lowered its head and threw it down. Bang! The lower half of the dragon's corpse shattered into a shower of countless crystal shards. Damn, it's so ferocious. Just what kind of trouble have you brought us, Gu? Why would you provoke something so powerful? I think it's actually one of the strongest 1,000-year soul beasts in the elementary spirit ascension platform. Before he finished speaking, Xie Xie had already been flying toward the bear with his light dragon dagger in hand. He had to prepare to launch a sneak attack at any moment. Gu was panting for breath as she said, "Who provoked it?" "It was the one that provoked me, okay?" Tang Wulin remained silent as the two of them bantered. With blue-silver grass attached to his two hammers, he sent them flying toward the bear's head. This big guy is so hard to deal with. It might not be as nimble or as quick as the horned dragon, but its attack and defense far exceeded the 100-year horned dragon. This is a 1,000-year soul beast. The 1,000-year soul beasts that produced purple soul rings in the past. Tang Wulin wasn't scared at all, rather, he was brimming with a desire to battle. After all, this was the Spirit Ascension platform. They could escape from the battlefield at any time and there wasn't anything more satisfying than true combat. He had never encountered a soul beast in the real world, so today could be considered an eye-opener for him. Bang, bang. The crystal bear wasn't particularly quick as it remained in place and simply blocked the two hammers with a raised arm. The powerful impact of the 200-kilogram hammers knocked into the crystal bear, making it stumble back a step. However, the crystal bear had now become infuriated. A yellow light flashed on the crystal bear's body as it charged at Tang Wulin with a roar. Tang Wulin shouted out, "You two retreat." Xie, what is this thing's weakness? Although he had also studied soul beasts, Xie was undoubtedly the most knowledgeable amongst the three. After all, Xie had received a strict education since childhood. The crystal bear's skin is as hard as copper and its bones are as hard as iron, but its weak point is its neck. Its neck is the weakest part of its body and all of its nerves are gathered there as well. Got it. Tang Wulin pulled on a strand of blue-silver grass, sending himself soaring into the air and out of the way of the crystal bear's pounce. It was good that the beast had a weak point since Tang Wulin wasn't too nimble. And maybe, just maybe, Tang Wulin would manage to defeat it with his golden dragon claw. In any case, they were in the Spirit Ascension platform. If they didn't experiment with things in here, then where would they test the golden dragon claw? You two distract it and I'll look for a chance to give it a fatal blow. Tang Wulin shouted from the air. The 1,000-year crystal bear's attack was met with nothing but air. It was smarter than the horned dragon though. It tore a small tree out of the ground and threw it into the air at Tang Wulin. With his hammers already back in his hands, Tang Wulin smashed the tree apart, but was sent flying in the air afterward. The bear made a beeline for him with its arms spread wide open. Pu! An invisible blade of light struck its neck, sending a wave of pain throughout its body. The bear growled in rage as it turned to look at its attacker. Xie shouted at the top of his lungs, "Come if you dare!" He slashed with his light dragon dagger and sent out another blade of light flying toward the bear. Meanwhile, Tang Wulin quickly stopped falling when a green light covered his body. With another tug on the blue-silver grass and the aid of the wind element, he soared back into the air. Over a dozen icicles flew over to provide Tang Wulin with footholds in the air, allowing him to change directions once again. A halo appeared underneath him as vine after vine of blue-silver grass twined around the crystal bear's legs. Tang Wulin didn't expect his blue-silver grass to halt and bind the crystal bear, he had merely hoped that it would be enough to slow the bear down. However, a bizarre scene appeared. The crystal bear exerted its strength in an attempt to break free of the blue-silver grass twined around his legs. Normally, it would have succeeded, but at that moment, a golden light appeared on the blue-silver grass. Although it was for but a split second, it was enough to halt the bear for a second. It was only a second before the crystal bear broke free from the blue-silver grass, but that second was all Tang Wulin wished for. In that second, Tang Wulin's soul power hadn't been depleted like previously. In fact, it hadn't been consumed at all, as his blue-silver grass had grown far more tenacious innately after he absorbed the power of the first seal. Xie took full advantage of the crystal bear's momentary stillness to turn around and retreat. His retreating speed, with the aid of Gu's wind element, was simply explosive. While Xie retreated, a giant fireball exploded on the other side of the crystal bear's head. Gu was starting her assault from the side. The three of them stood in a triangle formation, with the crystal bear in the center. It stomped furiously, unable to decide which of the three to attack. Xie, attack its belly. Gu, attack its eyes. Tang Wulin loudly instructed as he shot a strand of blue-silver grass at a tree branch, pulling on it to quickly fling himself to the crystal bear's rear. This level of coordination was to be expected after all their time spent cultivating together. Xie didn't bother to hide himself at this moment. With a flash of his figure, he brandished his light dragon dagger and shadow dragon dagger, one tangible and the other invisible. He slashed the air, sending a pair of light blades at the crystal bear's belly. Pu! The crystal bear was furious. It may not have known previously which one to target, but now it did. It immediately took large strides towards Xie. At that moment, however, blazing fireballs flew into its eyes. Although these fireballs were smaller than the previous ones, the quantity was far greater. The crystal bear raised a paw in front of itself while lowering its head. When it had received those attacks to its belly earlier, it had already begun to lower its stance. Now, it was forced to hunch in on itself even more. It was then that Tang Wulin chose to sweep in. The hammer in his right hand was held back while the hammer in his left was positioned in a defensive stance in front of his chest. With a golden brilliance, he released his golden dragon claw as his hammer descended on the crystal bear's neck with an earth-shattering force. Tang Wulin understood that victory or defeat would be decided by this one move. With his current soul power, he only had enough in him for this one attack. He had to bet everything on this attack. If it didn't kill the bear, then the trio would be forced to escape from the Spirit Ascension platform. Tang Wulin's attack was accompanied by an ear-piercing whistle as a green wind blade cut through the air and struck the crystal bear's belly. Gu had exploded with strength to match Tang Wulin's gambit and conceal the sound of his attack. Considering the fact that they were still 9 years old and didn't have any powerful soul skills, what they had achieved so far in this battle was already amazing. He arrived. Without the slightest hesitation, Tang Wulin swiped at the bear's neck with his golden dragon claw. A crunching, kaka noise came from the bear's neck as Tang Wulin tightly gripped it using his golden dragon claw's crushing effect at its full power. The crystal bear's neck had been crushed. It had to be said that Tang Wulin's full strength was over 1,000 kilograms. And with the added crushing effect, one could only imagine its tremendous might. However, Tang Wulin discovered that compared to the 100-year horned dragon, the crystal bear's skin was exceedingly tough and had actually put up some resistance that prevented him from completely crushing its neck. If he didn't have such immense strength or didn't attack the crystal bear's weak point, he feared that the attack likely would have failed. Is it finished? Xie stared as the 1,000-year crystal bear fell head first. This sight, in addition to the sound of its neck crunching, were enough to make him jump for joy. With 2 soul rings, he had the highest cultivation among them, so the fact that they could actually take down such a powerful soul beast was something to be proud of. At that moment, a layer of brilliant yellow light suddenly erupted from the crystal bear's body. The scope of this light wasn't too far, only about 1 meter in radius, but it actually enveloped Tang Wulin completely. No, Gu shrieked as the yellow light immediately crystallized Tang Wulin's body. His body was frozen in its stance. He gradually began to tip over and fall toward the ground. Crystal was frail and would fracture into shards upon impact. Tang Wulin was about to be shattered. Although this was the Spirit Ascension platform, there would still be residual effects after experiencing the trauma of shattering into pieces. In fact, it might even result in permanent injuries. Gu appeared beside him with a flash of silver light. She hastily extended her arms out to hold up Tang Wulin's body. Not only did Tang Wulin's crystallized form increase his weight, but he was also still holding onto his heavy silver hammers. One could not guess how much he weighed now. Gu was pushed onto the ground by the crystal Tang Wulin. The thud rang out and gave her a bout of dizziness, but she relied purely on her physical strength to keep Tang Wulin from falling onto the floor and shattering. As long as he wasn't smashed into pieces for a while after the crystallization, the crystals would gradually recede on their own and vanish. It was due to this that the most terrifying time was right after being crystallized by the crystal bear. Tang Wulin's consciousness was blurring, but he felt a stuffiness and a sharp pain in his chest. He couldn't perceive his surroundings, but when he looked within himself, he was astonished to find golden thread-like energy that seemed to have emerged from his stifled state to connect throughout his body. A dark, yellow energy poured into every corner of his body, but was resisted by the golden threads. He knew that these golden threads were not soul power since he had already consumed all of it when he used his golden dragon claw. He was also certain that the appearance of these golden threads served to alleviate the suffocation he felt. Tang Wulin, Gu. Xie hurriedly rushed over to their side. He carefully lifted Tang Wulin and pulled Gu, who was trapped beneath him, out. Gu had her eyes closed, her face like a golden sheet of paper and her breathing weak. She had been injured when the crystallized Tang Wulin fell on top of her. Xie looked around him. He hesitated slightly, before slapping the exit button on the back of Gu's hand. In an instant, she turned into a ray of light and disappeared. Tang Wulin was still covered in crystals, so it was impossible for him to hit Tang Wulin's button. Suddenly, the surrounding thicket rustled fiercely. It seemed there were a number of beasts approaching them. What do I do? Tang Wulin is still crystallized, and I can't send him back. What should I do? Xie firmly held his light dragon dagger and shadow dragon dagger as he mulled over his options. He should escape now while he still could, since his soul power was nearly depleted, but if he left, then the crystallized Tang Wulin would remain here all alone. Faced with such a dilemma, he didn't hesitate to choose the harder path. He knelt beside Tang Wulin to conserve what little remained of his strength and began to regulate his breathing. His gaze shone with a resolute light. His comrade was right beside him, so how could he leave him at such a moment? When he was small, his father had told him that a true man could support both heaven and earth. He had to be a man who could support both heaven and earth. Men had to be loyal, face danger head-on, and never abandon their comrades, even at the price of their lives. This was Xie's first time encountering a situation like this, and despite the fact that he was like a newborn calf, he wasn't gutless at all. Rather, he felt himself getting fired up. One dark green figure after another slowly emerged from his surroundings. There were at least 10 of them. They were wolves with dark green fur on their backs, their amber eyes filled with ice-cold ruthlessness. Slowly, they advanced in Xie and Tang Wulin's direction. Half of them headed for the remaining horned dragon's corpse while the other half continued advancing towards Xie and Tang Wulin, surrounding the two. Green Wolf, a 10-year soul beast. Among the 10-year soul beasts, it was considerably powerful, with a violent nature and naturally inclined towards living in packs. Powerful green wolves were able to cultivate to the 100-year level by relying on decaying corpses for food. Frankly speaking, they were scavengers of the forest. Xie shifted into a defensive stance with his two daggers and watched the slowly advancing wolves. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "You can have the crystal bear's corpse, but if you attack me, then don't blame me for being rude." He didn't know whether or not these 10-year soul beasts could actually understand his words, but his yelling still made them hesitate for a few moments, and that was enough for him. As long as he could delay them for long enough, Tang Wulin would break free of the crystallization, and then they could escape together. However, the green wolves were clearly far more interested in him than the corpse of the crystal bear. They didn't understand a single word he said and simply continued to tighten their circle around him. Under the gaze of their grim eyes, Xie's heart couldn't help but race anxiously. I can't hesitate anymore. I have to take initiative and make the first move. This video will end here.